Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's meeting, Committee of Adjustments. This is a meeting to consider applications for minor variance and consent held under the authority of the Planning Act of Ontario. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the proposal that is before us, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, and organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the committee, after consultation with the Secretary-Treasurer, will set a new hearing date. No further notice will be provided unless there are changes to the application. In order to conduct an effective and efficient hearing, we have adopted the following process. The owner and authorized agent will be given the opportunity, if so desired, to briefly explain to us the basis of their application, answer any questions that may arise out of the hearing. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for the presentation. You need to state your full name and address for the record. Any material submitted to the committee for viewing will remain the property of this committee. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All persons attending the hearing who wish to support or oppose the application will also state their name and address for the record. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to make a presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chairperson of the committee. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will also be at the discretion of the committee. If there are several speakers sharing the same point of view, we do ask that you elect a spokesperson to present the group's opinion. We do want to hear the views of everyone in attendance. However, covering the same points will not advance your case. The owner or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to comments made by any interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the owner or agent has any concerns found in staff reports, particularly with any proposed conditions, this will be your opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussion. Once the committee makes an oral decision, any person desiring a copy must file with the Secretary-Treasurer at this meeting a written request for notice of the decision. A green sheet is provided for this purpose. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the local planning appeal tribunal for the giving of any subsequent notice of appeal. Written notices of committee decisions will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variances and 15 days for consent to the applicant, the owner and agent, or any other person who has filed a written request for such a notice. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the local planning appeal tribunal. The last date to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary-Treasurer will then notify the applicant through written correspondence. People attending the committee meeting tonight should be courteous and respectful of all members of the committee, town staff, and any other people in attendance tonight. Tonight's meeting will be video recorded and available for future viewing on the town's YouTube channel. And we do ask that you maintain your cellular phones on silent during this meeting, as they do tend to interfere with the audio systems. Thank you. So we have the first two items on our agenda tonight are the election of the committee chair and acting chair, as well as the appointment of the committee secretary-treasurer and assistant secretary-treasurer. We will push those 2 points to the end of the meeting. In terms of regrets, we have no regrets this evening. Do I have any declaration of pecuniary interests? I see none. Thank you. I will now take requests for any deferrals or withdrawals of applications at this time. Would anyone like to withdraw or defer an application? I see none. We have no consent applications this evening, and our first application of the night is a minor variance application, CAV 032 of 2019 at 430 Reynolds Street. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Raed Rawi from Professional Floor Plans, 5147 Preservation Circle, Mississauga, Ontario, L5M74. I'm the agent for the owner, Stephen Agai.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Al-Rawi. Is there anyone here in attendance for CAV 032 of 2019 at 430 Reynolds Street? Okay, I see none. Mr. Arawi, we've done our site visits. We're familiar with your application for the proposed second-story addition and attached garage to this existing dwelling. Are you familiar and have read the conditions in staff's report?
Yes, I.
Do you have any further comments? Because we are prepared to take this matter into committee if you have nothing further to add.
Nothing further to add.
Members, do you have any questions of Mr. Arawi at this time before we take this matter into committee? I see none. Okay, then we are ready for a motion. Mr. Flemington, thank you.
Madam Chair, having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written staff report, which I do note is in support of, also having taken into account, noting that there were no written or oral objections with regards to the application, I am prepared to make a motion in support of approving the application as applied for, that it meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act, and subject to the condition that the proposal be constructed in general accordance with the site plan and elevations submitted. That the addition and garage be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated February 7th, 2019. And also that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where a building permit is not required, that the proposed scope of work has not been fully completed.
Well, very well. Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you, Mr. Arawi. The second item on our agenda is CAV 33 of 2019 at 270 Vickery Drive.
Good evening, Madam Chairperson, members of the committee. My name is Joris Kieran, Kieran Design in Oakville. I'm the agent for the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Kieran. I still have to canvass the room, although I don't see that many people here. CAV 033 of 2019, 2070 Vickery Drive. Is there anyone here in attendance for that? I see none. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Kieran. We are familiar with the application for this new two-story home. If you have nothing further to add, or...
I'd like to do an extensive presentation. Just kidding.
It's your time. You may do so.
No, go ahead.
Are there any questions of Mr. Kieran at this time? I see none. If you're satisfied with these comments from staff as well as their conditions, we can take this matter into committee.
Yes.
Okay. Very well. Mr. Talowski, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd be pleased to move this application be approved as applied for. I believe this is an excellent example on how to ask for a variance and still make it comply, fit in with the neighborhood. Even though the coverage is increased here, the applicant hasn't maxed out to the side yards, and he's presenting a house that, even though a larger footprint, presents itself as a bungalow. So I definitely feel this meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I'd like to note that there's nobody in opposition from the community, and I would make approval of this application subject to 2 conditions that are requested by staff, that the development proceed in general accordance with the drawings, and that a permit issue within 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Talowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. I know you have a second one on the roster at the end, but we'll take Mr. Merritt first, and then we'll come back to that. Are you sure? Okay, very well. Then we'll proceed to CAV 155 of 2018, deferred from December 4th of 2018 at 220 Southview Road. And once again, we've read the staff reports and done our site visits, and we're familiar with the proposed construction. Are there any questions of Mr. Kieran at this time? I see none. Mr. Kieran, do you have anything else to add, or can we take this matter into committee?
Nothing else to add. Please
Very
proceed.
well.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit, reviewed the materials, including the staff report and the extensive presentation from the applicant, I'd be prepared to put forward a motion of approval, finding that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act. I would note that there were no members of the public present to make a deputation, and there were No letters provided either. So the motion would be subject to two conditions. The first being that the approval be subject, that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated February 14th, 2019. Second being that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, and before we do rule on the motion, I have to submit on record that there is no one in attendance for application CAV 155 of 2018 at 220 Southview Road. Thank you. All right, so the motion before us is to approve with those set conditions. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you, Mr. Kieran.
Thank you.
Mr. Merritt, thank you for indulging us. And this is CAV 034 of 2019 at 392 Lakeshore Road West. We'll have to name an address for the record.
Madam Chair, committee members, town staff, Brandon, I have to say that this is much less intimidating than the council chambers. And we're only 12 minutes into it, and we've done almost 4 applications. This is great. My name is Peter Merritt from Stone Shore Design Build. I'm representing the applicant at 392 Lakeshore Road West.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Merritt. I still do have to canvass the room. We see it, but not everyone on the YouTube will see it until I've actually said so. So CAV 034 of 2019 at 392 Lakeshore Road West. Is there anyone here in attendance for it? I see none. Thank you. We may proceed. Do you have anything further to add to your application, sir, before we take this matter into committee?
Just praise. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Who would like to move a motion if you have no further questions for Mr. Merritt? Mr. Flemington, go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written report, noting that it is in support of, also taking into account that there is one letter in support of and no one in opposition to this application, I would like to approve this application as applied for, noting that it does meet all the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and subject to the 2 conditions that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated February 5th, 2019, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Flemington. I apologize for that. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay. The application has been approved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
And thank you, Brandon, for your guidance. I appreciate your help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now that we have, the floor is ours. We have minutes first before? Okay. So we have minutes to confirm for February the 26th. Who would like to move the minutes? Okay, Mr. Hardcastle's hand went up first. I think it's also a good time to welcome Judy on the committee and put her on the hot spot when no one's here.
As Secretary-Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment, it is my responsibility at the commencement of a new term to preside over the election of a chair from amongst the members. The process to be followed for the election is as follows. I will announce that the floor is open for nominations of the chair. A nomination must be moved and seconded, and the person being nominated must agree to allow their name to stand for election. The floor will remain open until all nominations have been identified. After all the nominations for the position of chair have been identified, I will declare the nominations for that position closed. If more than one person is nominated, I will announce the names of the person nominated in alphabetical order. Then I will call a vote separately for each person being nominated. Following the voting, I will declare the person receiving the most votes as being elected. If only one person is nominated, that person is deemed elected by virtue of an acclamation. The floor is now open for nominations of the chair.
I would nominate Ms. McHale.
I'll second that nomination.
Is,
And then vice? Or it's just
no, we'll
chair
do this
first?
chair first. Is that all the nominations? Can I close the floor for nominations? Okay. So I have a motion moved by Mr. Hardcastle and seconded by Mr. Flemington to appoint Chair McHale for the 2019-2023 term. Do you allow your name to stand for election?
Yes.
The nominations for the position of chair are now closed. At this time, I am pleased to advise that Chair McHale has been nominated and is deemed to be elected by virtue of an acclamation. I will now call for a vote. May I have a show of hands for all those in favor of this motion? Ms. McHale is hereby appointed chair for the 2019-2023 term. Okay, so we're going to elect an acting chair when Ms. McHale cannot be present. Do I have a motion?
I nominate Mr. Talowski.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. McHale and seconded by Mr. Hardcastle to appoint Mr. Talowski for the 2019-2023 term. Mr. Talowski, do you allow your name to stand for election?
I'll be happy to continue in my support of Ms. McHale in her role.
The nominations for any other nominations? The nominations for the position of chair are now closed. At this time, I'm pleased to advise that Michael Talowski has been nominated as acting chair. I will now call for a vote. May I have a show of hands of all those in favor of this motion? I hereby appoint Mr. Talowski as chair for the 2019-2023 term. Then you have to do this one. We just have to ask for a motion and a seconder.
Okay, so we have the appointment of the Secretary Treasurer pursuant to subsection 44 of the Planning Act. Heather McRae be appointed Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Oakville until such time as a new Committee of Adjustment has been appointed by the Town Council. Do I have someone to move a motion? Mr. Ian Flemington will move the motion. Okay. All in support of the motion to appoint Secretary Treasurer Heather McRae? Okay, the motion has been passed. Now, the second motion of appointment for Assistant Secretary Treasurer, again pursuant to the subsection of 44 of the Planning Act, Ms. Jasmina Radomurovic, as Assistant Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustments for the Town of Oakville until such time as a new Committee of Adjustment has been appointed by Town Council. Who would like to move the motion?
I would like to move the motion.
Very well. Ms. Judy Murray moves this motion. All those in support of this motion? Okay. Assistant Secretary Treasurer has been nominated as Jasmina Radomovic. Motion to adjourn our first committee of 2019. Mr. Hardcastle. Okay, we're adjourned at 7:20.